This is Patrick Roth, Senior Support Technician for eOne Business Solutions. Today we're going to look at retiring a SmartConnect 21 instance when the SQL Server or the database no longer exists. As you know, in SmartConnect 21, you can only have a certain number of instances. Typically that instance is 4. And so if you try to create a 5th instance, SmartConnect 21 will tell you that you don't have any instances remaining. So what you'd like to do is retire one. So if we look at the configuration tool here, we see that the currently connected instance eOne /eOne SQL to the SmartConnect 21 database. But let's say I want to retire this database. Now we'll notice that the SQL server is eOne-2014/eOne, and then the database name is testing1234. And I would like to retire this database, so I'm no longer using it. As a matter of fact, this server actually doesn't even exist anymore, so this has to go. And so we tell it to retire, and it says, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Yes, I am sure. And we'll just use SA creds versus SmartConnect creds, and it's checking us out. And it's checking. It's trying to find the server. It's looking for the database. And it says, hey, I can't find this SQL server, which isn't surprising because, again, the server no longer exists. And so at this point, I have no choice but to cancel. And now I'm not able to retire this instance. So what can I do as an end user? In this case, the solution is we can trick SQL. So on the SQL machine, this machine is the SQL server. It's connected to eOne/eOne SQL is the SQL server instance, and again, that's the one that's connected to this currently active one. But I really would like to retire this one, and so I could create a SQL machine, I could create a VM, I could install all this, but you don't actually have to. There's a trick in the SQL Server Configuration Manager. Let's get around this. So from the SQL Server, because it has the tools installed, and it's the easiest way to do it, is what you can do is define what they call an alias. And so since SmartConnect is 64-bit, we would use the SQL Save Native Client 11.0 configuration. If we were doing SmartConnect 2018, which is 32-bit, we would do the SQL Server 32-bit, but we aren't. And so we will create a new alias. And when you create the alias, we would tell it, who do you want to be? So in this case, we want to pretend we have an eOne-2014-eOne instance, and we'll leave the default port, and we will connect it to our actual SQL server, which again here is eOne/eOne SQL. And that is all that's to it. And now we said, hey, you can use this name eOne-2014-eOne, and we'll just redirect it to the SQL server. Now, if we go back here, the name of our database was testing1234. If we go to the SQL server, we don't have that database to do. The reason why we need the database is when SmartConnect retires a server, it retires it on the back end in our UAM, but it also writes information back into the SmartConnect database, SmartConnect 21 database, that says, I am a retired database. So the database itself knows that it can't be connected to. So we need to tell it that. And so the first thing we can do is on our SQL instance of a real machine is we'll create the database we're looking for, testing1234. And now the database exists. Now that wouldn't be probably good enough, because when SmartConnect is going to try to write back into whatever table it's writing back to, it won't be able to find it. And in theory, we could create it, but it's just as easy to do this right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our SmartConnect 21 database here. This is our current 21 database. Tasks. And we will back it up. And SC21 back is fine. and we created it. And then, since we need the table, and again, we could probably just create just the setup table and write a record into it, but this is just as easy. So we're going to restore this database, and we don't want to restore from a backup of this database, but we will use the one we just did. And if we look, it's going to restore it back. It's going to put it back into the name. Back to this destination database. And we're going to verify that our files are correct. Yep. So it's turning back. So if we restore this one, we didn't choose overwrite existing database. All right, so now we have it restored. So if we check the user database, we have the same users in it as before. So now it's this database, not this one. So if we go back to our tool, we still want to retire that database. So we'll choose retire again. Yes, we do want to do this, confirm. We'll again use the SA password. And there you go. We've now just deactivated it in the database. It's activated on our servers. So now this would give you an extra server, and it deactivated the database. And since I don't care about that database at all, since it's a copy of the other one, we will just tell SQL to hammer that database. And now from a configuration standpoint, I would be able to create a new SmartConnect 21 database if I have enough instances remaining, and I didn't have to restore any servers.